trouble of looking these things up, you'll be well on your way to a very nice lawsuit. And then it has an introduction describing the general purpose. In this case, we're talking about an extraordinary writ, which is what Core 102 is, and it's going to cover that. Now, then something that you'll find very handy is a checklist. One of the things that your opponent is going to be looking for is procedural error on your part. If you will go down this checklist and consider the things that are in the checklist, you can be well assured that he's not going to be able to find some procedural error in what you're doing. See, for example, it says whether the application is necessary or whether a direct right of action is conferred by statute. You need to find out the proper court in which to present the application, whether local statutes or procedural rules require that application be presented to and signed by a proper official, disclosure of probable grounds in application, and whether supporting affidavits are required. And so if you bother to go down each of these points and check that off, I checked this, I checked that, then you'll be in good standing. So that's the nice thing about AmJur pleadings and practice forms. Then behind that are each of the sample forms, and you need your captions, which will come out of your rules, and then your body here, and they leave the blanks, so you can fill in the specifics that apply to your situation. So now you know you're going to be in proper form. So this is a very handy set of books. One of the things that you'll discover as you become involved in litigation is that the rules provide, both civil and criminal, for discovery. This particular book of forms, called Bender's Forms of Discovery, deals exclusively with forms of discovery. I had a civil rights action, and in that I did some interrogatories, and because I just wrote them myself, the attorney was able to slip out of my grasp with regard to the responses because my interrogatories were not as well worded as they could have been. And if I would have gone to a book of forms like this and see how it has the type, this has to do with earnings, income, and assets, to employment suits. And so there's sample discovery in here. If I would have went to the civil rights section, I could find some discovery forms that would have applied to what I was litigating. And so a set of books like this could be very helpful to you during your discovery. This is a 2-volume set of books that could be very helpful for you. If you'll follow what the other books that we've talked about with regard to studying out your law first, getting your forms proper, following the checklist, then you can know that you're going to be in a proper position and you're going to have what in effect is a prima facie case if you'll state your claim correctly within your complaint. Prima facie means appearing on its face. And so when the judge looks at the complaint, he says, based on what's on this complaint, can I give them relief if they can prove what they allege? And if the answer to that question is, I could, then you have written, in essence, a prima facie complaint. Now, what these volumes of books deal with is, okay, so now I've shown that. What do I need to prove beyond that in order to get the relief I'm seeking? If you were suing somebody for, say, negligence, then the relief you're seeking probably is monetary. So basically, if you come back here, there's sample testimony. In this particular instance, the sample testimony is with regard to negligence. And so you'd be looking for, okay, how can I prove this negligence actually in court? And by reading what this volume has to say with regard to your particular instance, you're going to go into court knowing what you must prove. So once you've discovered what type of evidence you're dealing with pursuant to the rule, then you can come to Wigmore on Evidence, look that up within either the table of contents or the index, and it'll send you to a section. For example here, evidence to prove a human act. We got character or disposition as evidence of a human act. And then from here, it'll go into dealing with, okay, what can you use character evidence for in court? And see, the problem is you try to introduce some evidence, and your opponent objects. So when your opponent objects, you can tell him, look, Judge, Wigmore on Evidence says character evidence is admissible in this particular instance because, and you can just tell him what you read in the book, and if he wants, he's got his own volume there, he can look it up for himself. Causes of Action is another set of books that will help you decide whether or not you have a case. And if you thought that you had a product liabilities case or perhaps a personal injury case, you'd go to the index for Causes of Action, COA, and it'll send you to the particular volume that'll deal with whatever it is that you think you may have you may have, and it'll tell you within it what you must be able to prove in order to state a claim. So this is another good set of books to refer to before you start a suit. Another thing that you'll be doing as you're preparing for trial is getting your jury instructions ready. What you'll do is you'll come to a book like this, Colorado Jury Instructions, 3rd Civil. And these jury instructions are approved by the Colorado Supreme Court Committee on Civil Jury Instructions. And so there's a jury instruction in this book for each particular instance. In other words, the judge sees product liability cases come through, and there's a standard set of jury instructions for that. If you're in federal court, then here's a book called Federal Jury Practice and Instructions, both civil and criminal, which have been compiled, and you can put your proposed jury instructions in coming off of this. And then they'll be in proper form, and the judge will really appreciate that, I'm sure. So if you get it down the road as far as getting ready to go to trial, you don't want to be like a friend of mine who he basically was like a dog chasing a car, and he caught the car, and then he called up and said, I caught the car, and now I don't know what to do, because the federal court let him in and said that he had stated a claim, and now he's ready to go to trial. He didn't know what to do. So what you can do is you can come to the index for Preparing for Settlement and Trial, a set of volumes of books that deal specifically with that, and these books will help you get ready to go to trial. Another book that will help you do that same thing is Goldstein's Trial Technique. And you can look through this and determine what you need to know before you go to trial. To find out what your law is in a state, you'll be using Colorado Revised Statutes in the instance of Colorado. Different states call their law a different thing, but typically you'll be able to find your state law book fairly easy. This is updated by Pocket Parts, as you can see here, and published by Bradford Publishing. There's another, West Publishing also publishes Colorado Revised Statutes, their own version. And annotated, of course, means that underneath each statute that there is a brief paragraph that describes the results of the case. As I was saying, this is updated by Pocket Parts. A pocket part, rather than reprint an entire hardbound volume every time the legislature elects to change one single law, what they'll do is they'll take and they will publish this little pocket part that goes back in the back. And it is numbered in such a way that if you were looking at 18.8.501 of Colorado Revised Statutes, you just flip back to the pocket part and see whether that particular law had been changed. If it has, it'll have a reference there. Sometimes it has not, and what it'll have underneath it is the new annotations of recent court decisions that have been made. So now let's take a look at the Colorado Reporter and the Colorado Digest. This particular set of books is where they publish all of the appellate and Supreme Court decisions that issue out of the state of Colorado. On the back binder here are the volume numbers. This particular book contains volumes 12 to 22, and the abbreviation of this is P.2D. And so what this is telling you is that it's all the Colorado decisions, and that they're arranged by citations to Pacific Second Reporter, which is a volume of books that we'll be looking at a little bit later. Once you get inside this set of books, see how it has the little thumbnail deals that tell you which volume it is that you're dealing with. You come down here, get to the front of a case. Here, for example, we've got New Hingen versus New Hingen. It's a divorce case. It came from the Supreme Court of Colorado. It's a decision. This particular one was made on January 16th, 1933. Underneath that are what they call head notes, and it's a little paragraph about each of the topics that the court discussed. This decision discusses divorce, two different issues centering on divorce. If you look next to this divorce, there's what's known as a key number, and this one said 245 and then in parentheses a 3. If you go to divorce, section 245.3, you'll find a bunch of other cases inside the Colorado Digest that'll discuss this same topic here. Now, this number 1 right here is what's known as a head note, as I was saying, and this is just a brief discussion of what the case talks about. This can be very useful for you when you don't want to read the entire case. Maybe you're only